Welcome to Digital Deed and Notary Ledger, where blockchain meets real-world verification. In a world driven by decentralization and transparency, we introduce Notary Chain, the smart, contract-powered app.
Turn down for what? Turn down for what? Turn down for
What if you could take a dusty old legal document, something just sitting in a file cabinet, and turn it into actual cash? Well, today we're diving into how some really ancient legal authority is getting a high-tech upgrade to unlock value that's been trapped for decades, and in the process, it's creating entirely new forms of money. Seriously, just think about that for a second. What if there's this massive amount of tangible value hidden all around us in plain sight? We're not talking about buried treasure. We're talking about stuff sitting in shoeboxes and filing cabinets, all trapped inside everyday legal paperwork. I mean, think about things like legal judgments, shipping documents, insurance policies, or even a stack of unpaid invoices. On paper, they're all worth something, right? But that value is completely frozen. It's illiquid, which is just a fancy way of saying you can't spend it or easily turn it into cash. The whole purpose of the document is frustrated. It's just stuck. And the reason they're stuck is pretty simple, actually. There's just no trusted, standardized way to connect these physical, paper-based assets to our modern digital financial system. Without that bridge, all that value remains locked away, unable to be used as real capital. So how in the world do you unfreeze that value? Well, the solution is something we can think of as a financial refinery. It's a system designed to take these raw paper-based assets and convert them into clean, standardized, and most importantly, usable digital capital. And this whole refining process breaks down into 4 really key steps. First up, the paper document gets digitized on a blockchain, giving it a secure, unchangeable digital fingerprint. Second, and this part is absolutely crucial, it's legally authenticated. Third, that verified claim gets turned into a unique digital token. And finally, you can use that token as collateral to get cash. It's a process some are even calling credit mining. And just how powerful is this? Get this. Using this exact process, one platform took a $150 million portfolio of legal judgments and unlocked 75% of its value as liquid cash. And they did it in just 90 days. That is an incredible level of efficiency. Okay, but for this whole system to actually work, for it to be trusted, it needs a rock-solid anchor, a bridge between the physical world and the digital one that has undeniable legal authority. And that anchor, that keystone, is an office you've probably heard of, but probably not like this, the civil law notary. Now, it is so important to understand this distinction. We are not talking about the notary at your local bank who just watches you sign something. A civil law notary is a public officer, a legal professional who verifies the actual substance and legality of the document itself. It's a completely different universe of authority. And this power they wield, it's the magic ingredient. It's called delegated sovereign authority, and it basically means the state itself has given the notary the power to turn a private agreement into an enforceable public act. This step provides absolute legal certainty, which is what makes the whole process incredibly secure and trustworthy. This authority, this kind of golden standard of trust, is what allows these private, real-world assets to be safely brought into digital markets. The civil law notary is that authorized, trusted bridge, giving these new digital tokens a direct and legally enforceable link right back to their real-world value. Okay, so that's the theory. What does this look like in the real world? Let's break down a few examples of how this whole refinery process actually works. So let's say you have an ounce of silver sitting in a vault somewhere. A civil law notary can legally authenticate that it exists and that you own it. Once that's done, a unique digital token can be created or minted that represents that specific ounce of silver. That token now exists on the blockchain, where it can be used as verifiable collateral for other things. Or take something like goldbacks. These are pretty cool. They're voluntary local currencies made of actual, spendable, physical gold notes. Well, the same legal infrastructure of notarial authentication can be used to validate these instruments, which allows them to be recognized and used within this new digital financial ecosystem. It bridges physical gold with digital transactions. All right, before we hit our last example, you gotta understand this really cool legal tool. It's called a Series LLC. Think of it like a set of digital nesting dolls for your assets. It's one parent company, but it contains multiple separate series, and, this is the key, the liabilities of one series can't touch the assets of another.
It's a super powerful way to isolate and protect a bunch of different tokenized assets.
And here's where it gets wild. Instead of weeks of paperwork and legal fees, you can create a Series LLC instantly, right on the blockchain. Your crypto wallet becomes the legal owner, giving you an immediate corporate wrapper to hold and protect these new tokenized assets, with each one safely tucked away in its own series.
Now, let's zoom out for a second, because all of this isn't just some niche financial trick. It's actually part of a much bigger movement towards what's known as sound money. You know, money that's backed by actual tangible assets. And we're seeing states all across the US pass new laws to bring assets like gold and silver back into their economies.
And this is a really serious movement. I mean, look at this. You can see Utah was a real pioneer way back in 2011. Now you have states like Texas building digital transaction systems for gold, and Florida creating frameworks for electronic gold and silver payments. They are literally building the legal and technical rails to make gold and silver usable as everyday money again.
So, why does any of this matter to you? Well, because this whole movement gives people in these states new, tangible options for how they save and spend their money. By recognizing gold and silver as legal tender, they're creating a financial alternative, an option for commerce that can operate parallel to, but not totally dependent on, a single federal currency.
And all of this, from notarizing a legal judgment all the way up to a state recognizing gold as money, it leaves us with a really big, provocative final thought. When the combination of ancient legal authority and modern technology can literally create new forms of liquid capital out of thin air or out of dormant assets, what does that say about our very definition of money and of value itself?
Okay, so let's talk about something really groundbreaking. We're diving into a whole new financial and legal ecosystem, one that's designed to do two huge things: unlock trillions of dollars in value that's currently just stuck, and give purely digital organizations a real actual footprint in our physical world.
Right, here's the game plan. We're going to start by looking at a major problem, this huge disconnect between two worlds. Then we'll check out the incredible golden bridge built to solve it. After that, we'll get into the nuts and bolts, the machinery that makes that bridge work. And finally, we'll meet the very unique kind of architect you need to pull all this off.
So, let's set the scene. You've got these two massive worlds. On one side, you have the traditional world of law and finance, centuries of rules, paper, handshakes. On the other, you have this explosive new world of Web3, built entirely on code and decentralization. The core issue? They don't speak the same language. They can't talk to each other, and that's a huge problem. I mean, just think for a second about all the value that's locked up in our old school systems. Things like court judgments, shipping manifests, insurance policies. We're talking billions, if not trillions of dollars in assets, but they're completely illiquid. It's what we call trapped value. It's just sitting there, stuck on paper in a filing cabinet somewhere, totally useless as working capital. Now, let's flip that coin and look at the other side. The Web3 space, it is just bursting with innovation. You've got DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, managing treasuries worth millions. But the second they try to interact with the real world, like to open a bank account, hire someone, sign a lease, bam, they hit a brick wall. Because in the eyes of the law, they're ghosts. They're basically invisible.
So what you end up with are these two incredibly powerful worlds running in parallel, but they just can't connect. One is sitting on a mountain of dormant value, and the other has world-changing technology, but no legal way to use it. That's the great disconnect we have to solve.
So, how in the world do you connect these two universes? Well, it's going to take more than just a typical bridge. You need something really special, a structure that's built on an authority that is both incredibly old and incredibly powerful.
And this is absolutely critical to understand. We are not talking about the notary down at the local shipping store who just stamps documents for $5. No. A civil law notary is a highly trained public officer. They are literally vested with the state's own sovereign power to take a simple private agreement and elevate it into a publicly enforceable fact. This role, this person, is the bedrock of the entire bridge.
This is where it gets really clever. This leads to a concept called the auric standard. So AU is the chemical symbol for gold, right? Aurum in Latin. But it's also the root of words like authority and authentic. So the whole idea here is to fuse the state's legal authority with the timeless, verifiable value of an asset, kind of like gold itself, to create something that is just, genuinely, undeniably trustworthy.
This quote just nails it.
This special type of notary provides the absolute legal certainty that you have to have. They are the authorized official who can stand right in the middle of that great disconnect and build a bridge of trust that both the old world and the new world can look at and say, okay, that's real.
Okay, so we've got the foundation for our bridge. Now let's look at the first big piece of machinery we're building on it. I want you to think of it like a financial refinery. Its whole job is to take those raw, trapped, illiquid assets from the traditional world and cook them down into pure, liquid capital.
And this four-step process is called credit mining. It's a total game changer. First, you digitize that old paper claim, putting it on a blockchain where it can't be changed. Then, and this is the key, a civil law notary authenticates its legal power. After that, it gets tokenized into a unique digital asset. And finally, that legally supercharged token can be used to generate actual liquid cash. The results are pretty amazing, by the way. It's got a remarkable 92% success rate in converting these claims.
But you might be thinking, how do you make sure a system like this is actually safe? Well, the answer is you build a massive financial shock absorber right into it. The model requires a third-party depositor to provide collateral. We're talking stable stuff, like CDs or medium-term notes, worth a staggering 235% of the capital being raised. That creates this huge safety buffer.
And here's what makes this model so incredibly powerful. The business that needs the money, they provide zero of their own collateral. Their assets are totally untouched. That third-party collateral gets locked away in bankruptcy remote trusts, which basically creates a legal firewall. And through all of this, the client keeps 100% ownership and control. It's access to capital without all the traditional risk.
Okay, so we've figured out how to refine trapped value into liquid capital. Now for the other side of the bridge, giving those legally invisible Web3 projects a real body that the real world can actually see and trust. We need a container for all that digital value.
You know, this analogy is just perfect. Before the standardized shipping container, global trade was an absolute mess. Chaotic, expensive, inefficient. That simple metal box changed everything because it created a universal standard that every port, every train, and every truck on the planet could use. Web3 desperately needs its own version of that boring, simple, legally recognized container.
And here it is. It's the On-Chain Series LLC. And this isn't just some theory. It's a real-world, legally valid company. The magic is in how it's born. Instead of weeks of paperwork and lawyer emails, its legal documents are coded directly onto a blockchain. It's created instantly, the moment a user signs a transaction with their crypto wallet. It's corporate law moving at the speed of the internet.
So what does this all mean? It means this on-chain entity gives a DAO, or any Web3 project, a legal personality. This is the key that unlocks everything for them. They get limited liability protection for their members, and they finally get the legal standing they need to open a bank account, sign a contract, and truly bridge that gap into the traditional economy.
So, we have our bridge, and we have its two powerful pieces of machinery, the financial refinery and the digital container. But a system this complex, this revolutionary, it doesn't just build or run itself. It needs a completely new kind of professional. It needs a very specific type of architect.
I mean, really, who can do this? Who can stand at the intersection of civil law, decentralized finance, and cutting-edge cryptography? This isn't just a lawyer or a banker or a coder. It has to be a new breed of professional, someone who embodies the fusion of all three. And this brings us to the architect, Clark, who's earned the nickname the Superman Notary. And when you look at his toolkit, you see why. First, over 690 hours of specialized civil law training. That's the bedrock of public authority. Then, he's a licensed DeFi banking expert. That means he's fluent in the native language of Web3 finance. He holds a UCC Mint license, which gives him the legal power to actually create secured financial instruments on-chain. He's also an AA triple certified cryptocurrency arbitrator, meaning he's qualified to be the judge in this new digital domain. And on top of all that, as a perpetual trustee and fiduciary, he's legally bound to always act in his client's best interests. Each one of these credentials is a critical pillar required to build and operate this bridge of trust.
This quote just brings it all home. The civil law notary, embodied by a professional with Clark's almost unheard-of combination of training and tech savvy, becomes the absolute keystone of the entire system. He isn't just using the tools, he is the authorized bridge. It's that fusion of state-delegated authority, deep financial knowledge and the raw technical skill that allows him to run this system with integrity and guarantee that every single transaction is legally enforceable from start to finish.
So that leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending question to think about. We are literally watching the birth of a system where a legal document and a piece of code become the exact same thing. So what happens next? When legal authority and algorithmic execution merge completely, what new kinds of commerce, what new kinds of organizations, what new forms of value will we unlock? It's a pretty wild future to think about.
Turn down for what? Turn down for what? Turn down for
All right, welcome everyone. We're about to dive into something truly fascinating, a world where ancient legal power isn't just relevant, it's actually becoming the key to unlocking the entire future of finance. So what if I told you that the key to the future of finance isn't some brand new algorithm, but a 2,000-year-old legal tradition? Yeah, it sounds a little bit like science fiction, right? But stick with me, because we're going to explore how an age-old public office is becoming the most crucial piece of infrastructure for everything from gold-backed currencies to the tokenized economy. At the very heart of this whole revolution is this concept we're calling auric authority, and it's exactly what it sounds like, a powerful fusion of tangible value and undeniable legal power. And I gotta say, I love the wordplay here. Auric, it pulls from two different roots. You've got Au, right? The chemical symbol for gold, aurum, the ultimate symbol of value. And then you have author, which is all about the power to create, to authenticate. It's the perfect term for the figure at the center of our story. Okay, so let me introduce you to the main character of our story, the civil law notary. And look, you need to forget everything you think you know about a notary, especially if you're in the US. You're probably picturing someone who just stamps a signature. No. This is a whole different league. A civil law notary is a highly trained public officer, and they wield delegated sovereign power. What that means is they can take a simple private agreement and elevate it, turning it into a public act with the full force of law, something that's recognized all over the world. They are, quite literally, the authorized bridge. All right, Act 1. Where does this ancient power start making waves? Well, it's in one of the oldest forms of value humanity has ever known, sound money. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just quickly nail down what legal tender actually means. You see it on a dollar bill, right? All it means is that, by law, creditors have to accept it to settle a debt. And what's happening now is that states are starting to give that same powerful status back to gold and silver. And believe me, this is not some fringe idea we're talking about. Just look at this. It's a wave of activity spreading all across the US. You've got states like Utah, Texas, Wyoming, Florida. They're not just passing laws to recognize gold and silver as legal tender. They're actually building the modern infrastructure to support it. We're talking tax exemptions, state-run depositories, and even frameworks for digital transactions. This is happening right now. But here's the million-dollar question, right? How do you actually make a physical gold bar work in our super-fast digital economy? Well, this is where our hero, the civil law notary, comes back on stage. They provide that official, internationally recognized authentication, that legal stamp of validity that says, yes, this gold is real, it's here, it's pure, and that's what allows it to be tokenized and used in modern finance. All right, on to Act 2. This is where it starts to build. So, if the notary can bring old money into the new world, what can they do to protect brand new kinds of assets? This is where we learn how to build a modern-day fortress for your property. I absolutely love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. Think about it. Web3 has all this incredible innovation, but a lot of its assets are kind of trapped, right? They can't easily interact with the real world of law and banking. Well, the Ceres LLC, it's like the perfect solution. It acts as a standardized, legally recognized digital shipping container that lets you plug those assets into the rest of the world. So how does this shipping container actually work? It's pretty simple, really. A traditional LLC is like having just one big box. If that box gets hit with a lawsuit, everything inside is at risk. But a Ceres LLC, that's totally different. It's a master company that can create unlimited little boxes or series inside of it. And here's the magic part. Each one has its own separate liability shield. This is called ring fencing. A problem in one box can't spread to the others. It's brilliant. And the process for setting this up is just incredibly powerful. First, you establish that main master framework. Then, you can instantly spin up a new legally isolated series for every single thing you want to protect, every project, every NFT, every piece of intellectual property. It gives you a level of asset protection and flexibility that was just unimaginable before. Okay, but here's the critical question. How do you prove to a bank or a court that this fancy digital structure is actually, legally real? You guessed it. Once again, the civil law notary is that authorized bridge. By authenticating the on-chain formation, the smart contracts, all the operating agreements, the notary gives these digital native companies a rock-solid, real-world legal identity that everyone has to recognize. Okay, let's head into our final act. This is where all the pieces we've been talking about, sound money, asset protection, notarial authority, all come together to create this powerful new kind of financial engine. So, let me introduce you to the Justice Fund Exchange, or JFE. The best way to think about it is as a financial refinery. It takes these raw, kind of clunky assets, things that have real value but are hard to spend, like an unpaid shipping invoice, a dormant insurance policy, or even a multi-million-dollar legal judgment that's just waiting to be paid out. JFE takes these locked-up assets and systematically turns them to clean, standardized, and most importantly, bankable collateral. So how on earth does it do this safely? Well, the key is something called massive over-collateralization. Look at this number. For every single dollar that someone wants to borrow against their asset, a completely separate trusted institution has to lock up collateral worth $2.35. That huge 235% buffer is like a giant shock absorber, creating what the source material calls near absolute risk mitigation. It protects the entire system. And this whole refining process, it's just a masterpiece of legal and financial engineering. You've got 4 steps, but look right there at step 2, authentication. After a paper claim gets digitized on a blockchain, who steps in? The civil law notary. They legally verify its substance. And this isn't just some rubber stamp. This is the critical action that gives that digital record its legal power. It makes it a valid instrument that can then be tokenized and used to get capital. The notary is the absolute linchpin of the whole thing. Okay. So as we start to wrap this up, you can see this clear pattern emerging, right? There's a golden thread tying this entire new economy together. And that golden thread is the civil law notary. Think about it. They connect the physical value of gold to the legal system. They connect these new digital structures like series LLCs to real-world law. They connect abstract claims from the JFE to liquid capital. In every single case, they are providing the one ingredient you absolutely cannot do without: authentic, state-backed trust and authority. And really, this quote just says it all. In a world that's rushing towards decentralization, we still need a trusted, authorized bridge to connect our new digital world with the established one. And it turns out that bridge isn't a new piece of code, it's a centuries-old public officer. This fusion of ancient law and modern technology, it really forces us to ask a huge question. As we see this ancient authority merging with digital code, are we witnessing the dawn of true financial sovereignty? By anchoring our most advanced financial tools in one of our oldest sources of legal authority, are we finally building a system that can offer real financial freedom to everyone? It's a pretty incredible future to think about.